My name is Tyler Colburn. I'm the professional development consultant with the Nova Scotia College of Social Workers. We're joined by clinical specialist Veronica Bernard, who's going to be leading us through our content today. But before we do that, I'm going to get us started with welcoming and a land acknowledgement. Bear with me as I get my screens open here. I invite you to join us with this land acknowledgement as well. I'm also going to put some prompts here in the chat and would love for you to check in with us and also name the land that you're on. So bear with me while I do that. Yeah, I would like to begin by acknowledging that I'm speaking from Punamukutijik, which is colonially known as Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. It's where I live. It's where I often work from home. Very lucky and grateful to be a settler guest on this land. And I also want to acknowledge that the work of the college is done in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. The inherent rights of the Mi'kmaq were recognized in the peace and friendship treaties signed with Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, and the Passamaquoddy peoples from 1725 to 1779. This series of treaties did not surrender Indigenous land, resources, or sovereignty to the British Empire, but instead established rules for an ongoing relationship between nations. Canada later reaffirmed the treaties in Section 35 of the Constitution Act of 1982, and they remain active to this day. Would love to see some folks engage in the chat and name the land that you're on, but also respond to the prompts of your names, pronouns, if you want to share those, how are you arriving, practice area, context, and anything that you might be curious about today. So as we acknowledge the land, I feel it can also be helpful to acknowledge the ways that as humans, we are a part of nature. So on the right-hand side here, you see a graphic that shows a cross-section of a tree stump, but also a fingerprint, just drawing to mind the connections between our humanity and Mother Earth and nature. This quote from the bottom from Decolonial Future says, "Understand that the earth is not an extension of our bodies, it's the other way around." So we think about Indigenous ethics or social work ethics, and thinking about land acknowledgements and accountabilities to Indigenous people in this land, how might we improve that by thinking about the ways that we are also nature? Let us take a moment to pause in gratitude for all who have and continue to heroically care and advocate for this beautiful land. May we join them in this sacred work. So I'm thinking of land defenders and water protectors engaged in resistance and resurgence, not just here in Mi'kmaq, but across Turtle Island and also around the world. Let us ground ourselves in the wisdom of land-based Mi'kmaq teachings and values that we must all begin to learn. Let us work to decolonize ourselves, our practice, and this community that we share by working for justice for all living beings as an expression of our gratitude for being here. Let us take a deep breath and recenter ourselves away from the violent ways colonization fills our world and fills us. Let us take a deep breath and work on letting go of the unconscious bias that is everywhere, inside and out. May our session today lead us to be in right relationship with this land and with one another. Thanks for checking in, folks. I'm seeing people engage in the chat. Also, just want to acknowledge that yesterday was July 1st, Canada Day. So as we're thinking about Indigenous ethics and land acknowledgements and grounding ourselves in this session today, I think it's important as well to think about the tensions and paradoxes within this as a colonial entity of social work, within a colonial state of Canada, and also following yesterday, where many people were recognizing and celebrating Canada Day. So however you chose to spend your time yesterday, I'm grateful you're here with us today. Reminder as well that we are all treaty people. And so as we think about our treaty accountabilities and responsibilities for myself as a white settler Canadian, I'm thinking about how are these accountabilities related to my work? How does this impact what we do and how we do it? And how can it guide my work going forward and also the time we spend together today? It's also important here at the college that we commit to learning and unlearning in our professional development, but also in the work of the college. So we strive to uphold and work within the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to actions. And so just encourage folks as well, if you haven't read those, please do read them and look at the calls to action and how they relate to the work that you do. Separate and distinct from a land acknowledgement is our commitment for reparations for people of African descent. And so they are distinct and separate, but what I'd like to draw to mind here is that the forces of settler colonialism and the forces that led to the enslavement and displacement of people of African descent are parallel forces that's often wove and kind of danced with each other as they brought us to this modern day moment. And so for the college, we're committed to reparations. And for us, that looks like 5 different things: restitution, compensation, rehabilitation, satisfaction, and then of course, guarantees of non-repetition. So when we're thinking about reparations for people of African descent, we're really thinking about the folks who have settled in these lands, have been brought to these lands. And so we're thinking of Black loyalists and the Maroons, the Southern American Black refugees, and just really want to honor and acknowledge the legacies of these communities and how they've indelibly shaped Nova Scotia's cultural landscape. Within our professional development here at the college, we're also really wanting to make sure that we're taking a position, we're resisting neutrality. And so this quote here from Ubuntu-centered practice, a really great account that has lots of social media profiles across the different ways that you can engage with social media. They write, unless you're practicing with cultural humility, employing anti-oppressive practices, and decolonizing your approach as a mental health professional or healthcare provider, you are likely perpetuating anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism. The systems we work within inherently uphold white supremacy, and at their core, they are anti-Black and anti-Indigenous. Therefore, cultural humility isn't an optional cultural competency skill, it's an ethical and civic responsibility. So we engage with this concept and this idea in the work of Indigenous ethics, while also alongside social work ethics. How are we resisting neutrality, and how are we being culturally responsive and culturally humble? So checking in, I see people are doing that. I'm really appreciating that. I'll go through those in a moment, but welcome to everyone. We have 47 people on the call right now, plus myself and Veronica. So we're hoping people build some knowledge, shift some skills, build some skills, and also examine and shift beliefs and values related to the idea of ethics. For those who are social workers on our call today, this counts as 1 hour of PD towards social work ethics. If you've already completed that category for the year, you can put this in formal learning. For other allied health professionals, this will probably be considered continuing education for you folks as well. Then, of course, want to ground this into the code of ethics for College of Social Workers. So thinking about the different values that we have. So value 1, respecting the dignity and worth of all people. Value 2, promoting social justice. Value 3, pursuing truth and reconciliation. And then value 7, providing competent professional services. And one thing I just want to state here as a representative of college and also as a white settler is that Indigenous ethics and Indigenous ways of knowing and being are not alternative forms of knowledge. They're a form of competency and insight and wisdom that is not on the side of the dominant way. It is a way that has rigor and I guess professionalism and value, not in ways that we believe or assimilate to the dominant norm, but they stand on their own. And so it's not just about this alternative way of knowing and being, it's a way that stands on its own. Hope that makes sense. Didn't get a lot of sleep last night. Want to introduce Veronica Bernard, and I will pass it over to her shortly, but Veronica is a workshop facilitator, educator, and clinical therapist. She also runs a private practice as a clinical specialist with Mapping Minds Counseling. Veronica has devoted over 2 decades assisting others in the areas of mental wellness. She specializes in suicide and life promotion, proudly sits on the board of directors for Bereaved Families in Nova Scotia, a really rad organization, and formerly served as a director with the Canadian Association for Suicide Prevention and co-vice president, and is involved with many other working groups. She's a strong believer in Mi'kmaq culture, and Veronica continually develops internal wellness campaigns to assist others with holistic approaches to healing. Veronica obtained her Mi'kmaq Maliseet Bachelor of Social Work degree through St. Thomas University in 2011 and graduated with her Master's in Social Work from the University of New England in Portland, Maine, US in 2021. Veronica is also currently enrolled in her Doctorate of Counseling and Psychotherapy through Yorkville University. She's inspired by her lost loved ones and her family, and in her free time, she likes to write, create art with sea glass, bake, garden, camp, hunt, and fish. Currently living in Potlatech First Nation, located in Maggie, formerly known as Chapel Island in Nova Scotia. One thing Veronica didn't include in her bio is that she's a hoot. It makes me laugh quite a lot. Veronica, I'm going to stop sharing this presentation and I'm going to switch it over to your presentation. You ready to go?
Yes, I'm ready to go. And I'm so pleased to see everybody on the call today that's on the call. There's a lot of familiar people, and there are also some I don't know. So looking forward to getting to know you guys a little bit. All right, so like Tyler had mentioned, I guess we could skip through that because he did a really good intro on me. So my name is Veronica. I live, work, play in the community of Woodland First Nation, and this is my home community. And some of the things I'm going to be talking about today is like how I came into the field, some things like around the concept of time, like with our people, and some history about Mi'kma'ki, decolonization, and how I try to, I guess, infuse what I do with Indigenous practices and touch on, in very brief, the art of smudging, things like Mi'kmaq medicines and science as well. And lastly, death and dying. And I'll just get started. And feel free to, like, if you guys have like a question or whatever, like you can just put them in the chat and then we could answer them like in real time, or if you guys want to wait until later, it's completely up to you guys. So some of you on the call, I've noticed, like, you would have seen something like this in the past if it was done through the college, or with Nova Scotia Health, or I've been asked to do it a number of times, but it's very good content where I feel that it's not something that's really, I guess, out there in terms of, like, it is and it isn't. Like, I feel like it's taking flight in terms of like our ways of knowing and the importance of knowing that and integrating it into the work that they do as a therapist and community and just as a helper person. Even before I was a therapist, I've always tried to, I guess, learn our ways, and where we weren't really, I guess, brought up with a lot of like cultural practices when I was younger. It was only, I think, like later in my adolescence that I started to understand the significance of how I needed that in order for me to go forward in life and walk a good path. And so I'm just gonna jump right in here. So some of the things, I know some of you have heard the concept, like, say, Indian time, like starting late, or starting like when you're able to start, or a more natural way of like doing things. That's kind of what I try to push. So for example, I know today we're starting for 12. The ideas will run for an hour. But what I try to do in community is, meet people where they're at. So I mean, like, if they're like 15, 20 minutes late for like a scheduled appointment, I'm completely fine with that. I will still go on to see them. And if our like our interaction is taking some more time, for example, if it's like even sometimes like 2.5 hours, especially like an initial appointment, what I think back to is how historically with our people, just like many other nations, is that we used to use things like, for example, frogs or peepers, the ones that come out in the spring. When those would sound at night, it was when we knew when to harvest the smelt, or to go smelting, which is a type of fish. And for us, that usually happens like in the month of May, or what we call Scotia. So it's like the frogs are croaking, frog croaking month. So that's when we knew it was time to run. So I'm very conscious of that, and I try to take that into consideration when I'm helping. Is that, we're very circular, holistic in terms of how we do things, and very nonlinear. Okay. Just very quickly, I won't touch on all of these, but I'm happy to send this presentation afterwards to participants. So this is a beaded thing of the 12 months of the year that I think it was Ashley Sunnypass who had done from New Brunswick through the university. And I thought it was really beautiful, and it just highlights there very, very quickly, like January, the Frostfish month. February is the Abiknajit, or snow blinded month. March, the Tsukawibus, or the spring month. April, there's the May one with the frog. June, buds growing, summer. July, the fur thickening month. August, when we harvest berries, blueberries particularly. September, animal mating, October, animal fattening, and November is the frost month, and December is the winter month. But I thought it was really beautiful, and you can find it online. But um, so I just thought I'd share that in relation to what I just shared. So concept time continued. So Gizigaligos or August is a time to harvest. So with our people during this time is when blueberries would be at their best, so they're ready for harvesting. So growing up, every year when we were kids, we used to go to Maine, just like a lot of people in Mi'kmaq. We would go to the state of Maine in the US to go pick berries or broccoli, potatoes, and it was either to make like a living or to help supplement our income. Like for our parents, for example, they would go right, we'd go to the migrant school, they called it, and they would work all day and they would make some money for us to have clothes for school in the fall. Some people did it as a customary type of thing. My dad was actually a leaseholder up there at one time. He took over after my grandfather passed away, or when he got older, actually. And same with my husband's father. So it's now when we go, it's not really to work. It's more just, I think it's just very nostalgic. So I won't read all of this also because I know we're limited for time. So you often hear of like, okay, Turtle Island, or and where is exactly Mi'kmaq? So what I just like to share very quickly, there's a legend there at the bottom that talks about how, like, you know how it looks almost like one continent, that there's this little legend there that and I'll read it at the bottom there. So long ago, the world was covered with water, and many creatures lived in the sea, just like now, in the air above them. And there came a time when Mother Earth was ready to give birth to her new children, but these new creatures were not water creatures, and they needed somewhere to live. So the sea creatures wanted to help Mother Earth, and they heard of stories of Earth for below the waters, and the turtle agreed that if he could get some earth, he would hold up the land for Mother Earth and her new children. So one by one, each animal took a turn, trying to reach the bottom of the waters, and each animal failed. Finally, this brave little muskrat tried. He swam and he swam until he saw the bottom, and he knew that he couldn't make it there and back to the surface, but he kept on swimming until he was able to grab some of the earth. The other animals waited and waited until the poor muskrat's body rose to the surface. So all the animals were sad, but they saw that the muskrat was able to do what no one could. And he had gathered some earth in his little paw. He took the earth and placed it on the turtle's back, and the turtle began to grow and grow. And now Mother Earth now has a place for all of her children to live. She cast seed about, and the land became beautiful and full of life. So the turtle's back became a huge island that now sits in the middle of the waters in what's known as America. So Mi'kmaq for us, I arguably say it's not just, say, the East Coast of North America. Like it's we're kind of like scattered here, there, everywhere, like Newfoundland, New Brunswick, Quebec, also PEI, and the southern coast to Maine and New Hampshire. And just a very quick fun fact also, so there was a treaty that was signed in 1794, and it was called the Jade Treaty. So it gives us that allowance that we can travel and work freely across the international border. So we have what's called like dual citizenship. So yeah, so just wanted to mention that. So some thoughts to consider when we're helping. So waiting for someone to attend any appointment really can prove to be troublesome, especially when nobody like comes, like, or they're like what we call a no-show. So in mental health and addictions, we are taught that, like, say, after several missed appointments, one is then sort of sent a letter that, you know, you've had X amount of sessions that you've missed, so therefore you're sort of discharged from the service, or it's paused. And if they want to make an appointment in the future, you should do a whole new referral through intake and then wait to be contacted again to be reassigned. So in community, this is something that I try to work on, like with the individual, instead of just like, okay, yeah, they've had, you know, 2, 3 no shows or whatever. It's like I try to get to the root of it. So um and I want to mention here too, what I've learned over time is our people believe that the present is always the most important. So say something could trump something else. Like, let's say if it's, you know, an uncle who says, you know, you want to come over for coffee, or, you know, or maybe my son needs me at that, you know, moment or whatever. That is to be honored, and that is the most important time that trumps anything. So, or what this quote I found says here by Jonah Joykers, uh, we also observe time by observing the moon cycle and by using our senses, and this is how we believe that the creator meant for it to be. So just really not getting stuck on, like, oh, okay, they don't care, they're not here, they're irresponsible, none of that. Like, to me, I just didn't trust that something else took priority, or let's see what's going on. So why is this relative to our work again? Um, so set times may not always work for people. So for example, right now with where I work, I guess the standard is like 4 clients minimal a day for about an hour. And then for me, it's like, I feel like that's fine. Like, you know, that's the, but in community, that can be challenging, especially where it's like, I feel like there's alternative methods to healing, not just like, say, for example, in office settings, it's like, you know, we have our cultural camps, grandmother moon ceremonies, or, you know, maybe we're part of a potluck in the kitchen or stuff like that. That's all positive in healing. And I feel that that's why I guess I wouldn't just solely call myself like a clinical therapist or specialist. I feel like healing looks like a whole bunch of other things. Because, you know, even when I first started in this role, I did a little brief like a information session, and conducted this little focus group of, like, okay, what does the community need? Like a needs assessment, really, like, if you want to call it that. And heard from youth, heard from elders. So I try to tailor my work to what they want, all the while being employed here. And, you know, it certainly can be challenging sometimes, but I arguably say that, you know, how do you have that reflected in your calendar, for example, like a cultural camp that has over 100 individuals at, you know, you really can't. So anyway, I just wanted to make mention of that here. Um, there are other alternative methods to healing, and it's to be supported, and it's important. So going back to like some of the reasons why someone might miss. So again, could be life barriers. Maybe there's they have no vehicle, no childcare. I remember one time when I was enrolled at CU, we we were able to leave early for Halloween to take our kids out while it was still daylight out. And to me, that was everything. I didn't care about being present in school. It was like, I need to go now. So that's kind of how I try to operate and create like a good schedule, not even just for myself, but take that into consideration with the individuals that I help. I believe that you start when you start and you finish when you finish, more organic versus say, okay, we're running out of time. Let's wrap it up. I'll see you this time. I feel that you just kind of let it like run its course. And my uncle's funny. He's a poet. He said that I was not fast food. He said I was a dining experience. So I don't know. I put that in there. I thought that was funny. We think more empirically and in a holistic way. Um, so why I put that there is like, you know, say like I have some some people that I'm currently working with right now. Um, that okay, when I'm trying to describe to them, okay, this is what I do. Like this is my title, but this is what I do. To me, that's the way, like in terms of effectiveness, with the way I have to conduct myself in community. Otherwise, it won't work. Because I've tried it. I tried it as an adolescent when I was a teen in services. It was very different. So I try to, I guess, talking about cultural humility and how I practice is to always have that at the forefront of what I do. Um, Another example I'm going to share with you guys here is that um, with healing. So I had this individual that I was seeing, and they went through a very difficult time. And it was only when he harvested his first moose that I feel like what he was provided with at that moment was nothing in comparison to what we had been going through, I guess, from July to October when he harvested that. And so for me, again, that has to be supported and taken into consideration. Um, Another thing too is just with people in authority, like authoritative types of individuals. I know that sometimes, like, say, like when I share that I'm employed through Nova Scotia Health, and even in my previous roles, there's can be sort of almost like you know, like I guess a fear associated with it because historically, as we know now, there was a lot of harm that was done to not just our people but to others. So I try to shift that a lot and just let people know that we're trying and we're trying as you know um, an organization to tailor our work in such a way that we sort of remedy what was the damage that was occurred. So, and also here too, what people don't realize too, so when I first got in the field, I was told to find someone that was like me and to be mentored under. And then I realized that was difficult. So we need more people in the field, and there's not a lot. I feel that like it's getting better, but like, and what people don't realize too is that we need to have that shift also with that way of thinking and knowing, because before, we would lose things like our status if we obtain higher education. So we need to. I just want to put that in there with all of this going back to healing and going back in order to move forward. So the lingering effects of colonialism. So Dr. Michael Yellowbird, he's an individual I came across online, and he was really amazing. He talks about like decolonizing the mind and what we got to do in order to heal. And some of the things like what we're currently dealing with too, what I take into consideration when people are missing appointments or if they're late or there's some reluctance there is that there's a whole lot like else. There's so much else going on in terms of like the intergenerational trauma that we all hear and talk of, and but what is it? It's like you know we we basically were byproducts of our family and what they've endured, and a lot has transferred onto us. So, it's impacting us like significantly with substance use disorders, mood disorders. There's a lot of health disparities, even with colonization and or centralization. Like there was a time Bogotek was the biggest reserve, and that changed. People had their homes burned here, and a lot of individuals didn't just go to residential school, they went to Indian Day. And the only difference between the two was total immersion with residential school versus Indian day school. You could go home at the end of the day. But a lot of the violence that occurred there is similar. We have like high rates of incarceration. So Tyler had mentioned I do private practice as well. And it's like, how do you help someone to not reoffend? Or how do you really, really, it's truly a thing. You can't just, okay, I'm gonna use this treatment modality with cognitive behavioral therapy, or we're gonna do, you know, um, some other kind of a treatment method. I feel like we have to go back to our ways. Hate crimes, a lot of different things going on, even present day. Like I know Tyler had mentioned about Canada yesterday, and it's the significant day. And just like even National Aboriginal Day, and how we choose to look at it all, I guess, for me, I I'm about moving forward. So yesterday was a great down day for me. We were out in the deck just observing, and we had our granddaughter with us, and we went swimming. And I just chose to, I guess, be grateful that we're still here. We're trying and we're learning every day. And mismatch. So if you go to the next slide, I'll talk about mismatch in a second. So Dr. Michael Yellowbird, in one of his presentations, and I really encourage you guys to check it out. He has some YouTube videos that are really helpful with, I guess, and why I put them in this presentation is I try to have it like explain how this aligns with me and why it's so important. So evolutionary mismatch, also known as mismatch theory or evolutionary trap, is a concept in evolutionary biology that refers to evolved traits that were once advantageous but became maladaptive due to changes in the environment. So I had this conversation yesterday with someone. We talked about how, even with the grounding, like I don't know if you guys have ever heard of grounding, when you go outside, and there's like a whole science to what happens when your feet are on the ground. The way our feet land, shoes were not a thing. There's a lot of things that we've since moved away from. Diet, um, you know, we've had spikes in so many things, not just diabetes, but like hypertension, all these things that go back to, I guess, what it wasn't our ways. So what we need to do, I guess, is strip away anything that's harmful. And also, a big thing here is the restoration of cultural practices, thinking, and beliefs, and not just with Mi'kmaq people, with everybody in general. A lot of this stuff has since, I guess there's almost like a resurgence now, because there's science that backs a lot of these things. So we need to do better, be better, and educate ourselves on all of the, not just the harms, but how the healing aspect. So if we want to continue, I'm keeping an eye on the time as well. Some of the recommendations he talks about with how to restore our well-being is running, dancing, singing. Sleep is huge, laughing and humor, collectivism, intermittent fasting, meditation, hormetic stress, and being outside. So I jumped on a call with Dr. Michael Elber because I was so inspired by his presentation. And I had so many questions because it was like, okay, what is this? Okay, okay, explain to me. What do you mean about with dancing? Like, why would that be, I guess, like relevant present day to me? So he talked about like this example of this woman who had the early onset of dementia, and she started to dance, and there was a whole science thing that had occurred that reversed the signs of dementia. He talked about laughter and what kind of gets activated in our brain. Is really crucial to our survival. Talking about fasting, what happens after, say, 18 hours of fasting, for example, with the body and the cleansing, and even like your, say, hypertension level, like your heart levels, like if you are one who was plagued by health or heart health issues. He was talking about like, historically we would have to go out and harvest our own animals and all of that, and we didn't know when we were really going to eat, or there was certain times of year that particular thing was only available. So there was a whole like cardiovascular thing that went on too, and very lean. He talked about his children and how he's big on meditation and um, just practicing mindfulness, the importance of that. And I can't get into it because it's a whole like a big thing, but you can find it online, and it talks more about things like migrational cells and dendritic spines and telomeres, and how, I guess, long story short, we're born with certain things in our brain that are like called telomeres. They're like T's, and over time, like throughout our adolescence and adulthood, it shifts a bit. And he talks about by doing some of these things, we can also reverse the signs of things like with ages that comes with ageism. So check it out. Um, Other ways we talked about on our call, I remember it was like ways how we can all improve upon our mental health, get professional help if needed, and not just professional, like if it's even talking to an elder or someone you trust. I certainly had a lot of that, thankfully, growing up. The art of staying positive, everything is energy. So, I'm big on that. Adequate sleep, healthy coping skills, uh, being active, not just like in a gym. It could even be just being outside. Like yesterday, for example, we went swimming. Um, Hunting, fishing, and harvesting, that those are all positive things. And even going back to that individual who had harvested his first moose and the pride that came with it, and learning about those ways. And also prayer and ceremony, like I think they're definitely things that certainly help me too. We're actually trying to work on getting a women's sweat and a co-ed sweat facilitated. I think this upcoming month actually, when this individual's back. And again, it's like going back in order to move forward, I think, and teaching others if they don't know, like creating opportunities for people, I think is very important. Um, this is something I try to integrate into my case planning. So everybody hears of case planning, what's inside your case plan. So what I try to do is integrate what was taught to me from the late elder Regina Marshall and Albert Marshall. So back in like '02 when I was at CBU, they were guest lecturers at the university in our integrative science course. And I remember Medina asking, what is an elder? So everybody was kind of raising their hand, or like someone who has gray hair, someone who's old, someone on old age pension, someone who gets their power paid and their oil, and it's like, no, no, no. And it's like, she basically said that you can even be like a young elder in it's when you embody all of those gifts, which is respect, courage, honesty, wisdom, humility, truth, and love. And she just basically told us to like be cautionary when it comes to drawing on elders, because sometimes there can be elders that are older, but they don't possess certain qualities. And why I do what I do, even today, it's like my teachings were that it's not mine to keep whatever I'm acquiring. It's my job to share what you know when it's appropriate, and that what we currently possess, it's not ours. It's not, it belongs to everybody. So I just thought I'd share that. Just a quick, uh, earlier when I touched on Mi'kmaq prayers, there's a really nice one that Helen Silverwood from the Smudging, she did, and she translated it into Mi'kmaq. I usually like to do this one if, say, we're opening up a space or sometimes closing a space, and just basically, what you're inviting and just setting your intentions and your wishes and yeah. So hieroglyphics, accent, and dialect. So I've been told I have an accent. I didn't know that until I was much older. It was kind of funny. I was like, "What? I don't have an accent." It's like, "No, you certainly do." And they're like, "What are you, French?" And I'm like, "No, I'm totally not. I know I kind of look like lighter complected and lighter hair, but it's like I also recognize that when I'm helping individuals that, especially the older ones, maybe their first language is Mi'kmaq, and so being like in a setting such as like in this office, it can be very challenging. But I think the advantage that I have doing what I do is that where I comprehended that it's like there is no language barrier. And I have that understanding of our culture and lived experience. So when people are coming into me, there's like a familiarity there. And again, going back to how I shift gears. So, we had suicide last year, and being in the field for so long, like I worked in a zoning for 17 years, and now it's like I'm coming on to 5 years with the health authority. One thing that I was able to provide here was a safe space for people to connect. So they had people playing cards, eating, they required more. We had 5 offices set up with all these different helper people from different fields. And there was a time that every room was filled and our whole boardroom was filled. So again, um, meeting people where they're at, and again, just really, I really wish and hope that more and more people get into this industry, because it's certainly like it can be problematic, especially when we're trying to obtain services and get help. Smudging and our sacred medicines. So again, I'm very conscious of the time, 12:46. So there's, four medicines that are typically used, not just again with our people. It's like pretty standard throughout, but I think that what I've been taught, that say if you're giving an offering or if you are requesting some something in prayer, you put tobacco down, or say you harvest something, you put tobacco down. But it's typically like cedar, sweetgrass, sage, and tobacco that are the 4. Um, and it's, I think, again, it's very integral to me and how I do things in an office setting. Like for me, it's like it makes sense to incorporate this every day into what I do, because let's say Veronica now, like I can be, balanced, and then say if I had an individual I'd want to call and there's a lot going on, to me it makes sense to, with purification and to help center me again, and also the individual. So we offer stuff like that here as well for the people that we work with and people that request it. It was something that was taught to me a long time ago, but it was only much later in my life that I started to adopt it. And what people don't realize too is that, you know, there's like going back to science, there's a whole science associated with smudging, like something like desert sage, like it possesses things like these polyphenols and all these things. They're actual natural astringents. So they are like antiseptic. They're super cool. You can find some stuff about it online. If you look up desert sage and medicinal properties. Really big on trying to help promote smudging within the healthcare system, and also here too, like we can actually smudge here, like there's a whole ventilation system that it doesn't affect others.
Veronica, I'm just popping on here just to let you know that this call's scheduled to 1, and some people might only have to 1, but if you have more time and you want to go through more, we absolutely can.
Okay.
So don't feel stressed about the time if you can.
That's funny. That is so funny because just talk about the concept of time. I'm trying to get 32 slides in. It's like plus yours, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's always mine that add the extra. But anyways, I'll let you keep going. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you too, Tyler. Um, so a lot of you guys probably heard already of the two-eyed scene, which is like, for me, what I think of as big pharma or holistic medicine or Western science, and then maybe like the hospital, or sorry, not the hospital, but Westernized science, um, more therapeutic, clinical, medicinal approaches, pharmaceutical, and then what I try to do is integrate the two. And so it's like, okay, yeah, I can provide certain assessments and treatment modalities and work with other people in, an individual circle of care, and maybe they require a prescription. But I also try to integrate again, like I said, of working on a naming ceremony and a sweat, a co-ed and a women's, and like we have our cultural camp coming up in the fall, all those kinds of things, and integrating medicines. So if you want to continue, I found this really, really, really cool poster. If you want to click to the next slide, Tyler, and check it out. You can probably find it online. And what I see is two-eyed seeing, and it's called the healing web. And I know it's not very clear, but if you look on there, like for example, with ADHD, it's all color coded. So that little teal color in the middle, it talks about, like, let's say on the left, when I talked about big pharma earlier, you're more treating the symptoms, and there's like, it talks about certain medications, and there's all these different things with how to deal. But then when you go to the right, there's other ways to treat it, but more treating the cause, not just the symptoms, but in a holistic way. So that's when I saw that, I saw two-eyed seeing, and you can find it online. I actually have a big poster on my wall of it that's framed, and it's just wonderful. So even that, I like this much better versus it's not one or the other, it's both. If you guys are looking for a really good book on some of the stuff I talked about, and even like what was done historically, I keep talking about that. In the book, there was there's a chapter in there, and I actually have it right here. They talk about the use of like a buttercup and how they used to like harvest it and create a juice with the leaves, and it was applied like to the nostrils, and it was said to cure headaches. It was also said it cured cancer and to treat cancer. And what it would do, what would happen if you had it in a certain spot, it would draw the poison out of the growth. And another thing is it also helped with dealing with mental health issues, like if someone had what they was considered pent up feelings, like anxiety. So super interesting. Check it out. Buy it on Amazon. I buy it all the time for people and share it as a thing. It's a lot of it's backed. Ceremony in the mind. Some of the other things I try to do, pushing back, say, even when I was doing my placement for school, it's like seeing past diagnoses or a diagnosis, like say someone might have what presents as like having schizophrenia, but maybe they're a gifted individual that sees spirit. Um, eye contact with their people, that's a big thing. Like it's possible to have a complete like effective session with someone without making a lot of eye contact. And some of the beliefs before was that it was seen as like almost like intimidation, or it was like a form of respect when you didn't. So there's lots of customs to take into consideration when we're helping. Like if there's men talking in a room, you take a step out, walking a certain way around people and their legs, for example. So we keep going. Um, Participated in a big ceremony, and I'll I'll touch on that like me just very briefly. So like I had mentioned about with like big pharma, one of the things that when I was younger, that was something that would occur with me was seeing spirit and having things like prophetic dreams and whatever. So it was really, it was worrying me, and it was very, it was keeping me up. So in 2009, I went to a pipe ceremony, and the individuals that conducted it afterwards told me why this was occurring to me. So it's like, you help a lot of people, just like in spirit, people identify you as a helper person, so they're drawn to you. And the word actually, Mi'kmaq, one of them is Giscomsit, and some people know them as drones too, but they're like visionaries. And that's another thing I try to support in community when I have an individual that's, I guess, I don't want to say plague, but they're gifted. It's like educating them on that other piece that maybe they might not get in a hospital setting. Want to keep going. So other things I'm connected to, Tyler had mentioned CAS was a big part of my life for 6 years, the Canadian Association for Suicide Prevention. Lots of different collaborators I work with, like Roots of Hope, Injury Free, Indigenous Service Canada, Bulldotic First Nation, do a bunch of different events, such as like our annual Forest of Hope event since 2023. So Bulldotic has it for Nova Scotia, and I'm really happy about that. And if you guys are ever passing through, there's a trail in community that goes to different points, and check it out. Help with the establishment of the 988 number in various crisis centers. Just always being asked to do different things in universities or colleges. So if you want to continue, but I mention that because it's important. And what the Forest of Hope is, it's just this forest dedicated to, I guess it's all in the name of hope and to help those who have been affected by suicide and create awareness. So currently right now we have, I believe, one out in Ontario, there's one out in Winnipeg, and then Quebec has it. And also this year, I'm not sure where exactly it's going just yet, but super positive, super important. And for those of you who don't know too on the call, why I'm in this field and why I do what I do too, is a lot goes back to just being affected as well. So if you want to continue, keep going, get them dying, someone's sick in the hospital, I think it should be encouraged to have lots of food. Don't discourage a lot of people coming. We don't leave the dead when they pass. In community, we offer up like sacred fire, working like with the Union of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq, sweat if needed. We have our wakes usually in our homes for a number of days, and then our funeral, and then what's called a soliday, which is an auction. Okay, keep going. Oh, some other things too, what I think that needs to be done. I wish we could triage people differently, but I think we're working on that now. Transfers of care. Whenever I get people, I can immediately try to see them. Consulting with other First Nation practitioners, seeing what other people are doing. Continuing to help with adopting smudging protocols and just respond better instead of, after the fact, more in a preventative way. So keep going. Just together we can make a difference. And I have here, I'm going to mention the ACE score. So for those of you who don't know what the ACE score is, or it's just adverse childhood experiences. So, there's 10 things on there, and I think anything 4 and up is concerning. But for me, it's like I don't pay attention to that. Just like in specific, like, okay, just like a diagnosis, it's like, okay, what do you do now? And you're still capable of, I said, healing oneself, like going back in your previous traumas. Okay, keep going. There's my granddaughter. And I put those all in there because I see that with the kids coming up, how it's just never too late. So I currently have 4 kids, 2 grandchildren. So she's smudging, she's cutting wood, she's drumming. I think she has a rabbit, and she has a partridge heart in her hand, and she does jingle just dancing too. Keep going. And this is my beautiful grandchild. So Chandler has autism. He's 5, going on 6. We see them as gifts. He teaches me more than he knows. And I'm emotional. I love them very much, and gives me hope. Yeah, we'll keep going. But yeah, thank you guys. And I don't know how we did it for 1 o'clock, but I welcome any questions, any comments, and maybe Tyler, you want to quickly go over my father's thing very quick. So my dad was a social worker for many, 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 many years. And I interviewed him for school one time. And after he passed away, I said, oh my God, wouldn't it be wonderful to have like an Indigenous code of ethics? But according to my dad. So he passed away on December 5, 2019. And again, he was doing social work when nobody was doing it, like in the 70s. And so Tyler was nice enough to compile this in a beautiful little graphic. So we'll just go through them right quick. Remember to treat others as equals. Eye contact was looked at as a form of disrespect, or at times it's like you were challenging them. Relationships, he referenced people as his friends. I now know he was bound to confidentiality. Like I'd say, Dad, who was that? And he'd say, that's my friend. That's my friend. Dad, who's in your car? Who are you going town with? He's like, that's my friend. They were all his people. So now I just say the same thing. They are my friends, right? It's like my person, my girl, my boy. Going, understanding our history. So my father attended Indian day school. And what he said was, again, the only difference between Indian day school and residential school is RS was total immersion, and IDS meant you could go back home at the end of the day. The abuse they endured was the same. So being informed in this area is huge when we're helping in order to better help our people. Be relational, you connect with others more on a social basis. So you have tea, you take a drive, you go eat. So he smoked. So big too is they say, you want to go outside for a cigarette or whatever. I don't smoke, but and I understand this can be tough with professionalism, especially with college. But to me, what he would say goes back to the humanness in all of us and how he connected the most with people. He said was more on an informal basis, and you get more out of it when you connect that way. And there's no you, me, it's us. Avoid fancy terminologies. So he'd say kiss method or keep it simple, stupid. Or in Mi'kmaq, it's like especies, like you're especies, like you're sort of articulating something and making it way more fancier than it has to. He's like, just keep it simple. And his first language was Mi'kmaq, and our people loved it. And what he'd say is something that could be communicated in an office setting with another clinician. Um, he was able to get more, I guess, I want to say accomplished, let's say within an hour versus say offers or if someone's obtaining help because of them having their language as a as their way of communicating. Keep going, meet them where they're at, walk with and alongside your people. They fall, treated it as if it's the first time, and the hope is one day they'll find their way. Deepen in their understanding of the effects of colonialism was key. You have to go back in order to move forward. A lot of their issues it was what they were subjected to, and it's not their fault. Or unweave the bad patterning. Always try your best to your ability. It's important to uphold all levels of professionalism and keep good notes. I always told me that. It's basically like cover your ass, he'd say. If you don't know, ask. So draw on others if you have to. Consult with other peers, colleagues, and others who can provide support. And I certainly try. I don't claim to know everything, and I certainly don't, and I'm not ashamed to ask when I don't know. Confidentiality is huge. If you breach it, then you'll have no clients, and you will lose that trust. And again, I know that can be hard in reserves and in community, but you absolutely have to. And lastly, I think this might be the last one. You are only as good as your word. So if you say you're going to see someone or you're going to do something, you try your best to ensure that you follow up with that. Otherwise, then it's just words.
Thank you
Is
so
that
much,
the
Veronica. Yeah, that
oh,
was the last one.
uh,
I just wanted to share that, like, through this conversation and the relationship that Veronica and I have been building, it was helpful, and I feel very privileged to be able to know a little bit more about your father and the work that he was doing in community, and reading these code of ethics and from his perspective, it just really reminds me of what you talked about in your presentation about, like, at the end of the day, it's about our humanity and finding our shared humanity. And that every single day, each one of us, whether we're social workers or another health professional or another helper, have to navigate our own values, morals, and ethics alongside policies, legislation, code of ethics. Um, and it's tricky. And we each of us every single day has to make up what's right for us in the moment with the people that we're working with. So just really appreciate your presentation and spending some time with us today. Before we wrap up, and there might be some questions in the chat, but I don't see any right now. But reminder, if you do want to ask some questions, now is a great time to do it. Before we do that, I do want to just point to our evaluation survey. So if folks could fill that out, that'd be really, really lovely. I'll put the link in the chat. Bear with me while I find everything. My screens, I have too many open. If you could only see the tabs that I have open right now, like a vision on the inside of my mind. And people are already doing this sort of naturally, but I'd love to know, what are you thinking and feeling as you wrap up the session today? So any ideas or things that you've heard that you'll take with you into your practice, or anything else that you want to share to help close out your experience of this session? And of course, the evaluation survey is there. And then I wanted to point to some upcoming events that we have. July 17th, we have our Cultivating Our Wellbeing. That's sort of an informal community of practice focused on the prevention of vicarious trauma and secondary stress. We have a lunch and learn on the 31st around the power of mentorship. August 13th, it's around eating disorders and social work with the session, But What Do I Say? So supporting clinicians and social workers on how to address eating disorders if they show up in the work that you're doing. August 18th, understanding social work burnout and how do you prevent it. And then August 26th, we have a closed group for queer and 2S LGBTQI plus social workers. So please follow us on our profiles, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, our website, of course, our newsletter, and then our Eventbrite. Those are the best ways to know about what our upcoming sessions are. I will stop sharing and just want to double check, see if there's any questions in the chat. Oh, I just seen someone Charity saying, I want to mention my coworker thought the session was only for Indigenous individuals. It was such a great session. You might want to offer it again. Thanks, Charity. Yeah, Veronica, I mean, I could listen to you speak all day. So anytime you want to come back.
Really, you
Lots
guys.
of, yeah, go ahead, Veronica.
Oh,
Sorry.
no. I'm just trying to read some of the comments as well because I haven't looked at it at all. And thank you for putting those in the link as well with the Forest of Hope and also in Budladek and what Norma suggested. And
Well, my pleasure.
yeah.
See, someone has a question around, do you have tips on how we can take these decolonizing principles to this manual and our process in making it? So I'm hearing or seeing and reading a little bit like, how do you apply these decolonizing principles? Maybe I don't understand the question. Christy, do you have any more insights? Oh, to the policy and procedural manual. Okay. So any thoughts or insights, Veronica, on how you take these decolonizing principles and apply them to policies, programs, practices, and things that exist within agencies? And here I'm assuming it's Nova Scotia Health, but generally any organization.
Yes, it's definitely challenging, like especially where like, I feel like ideally, like let's say with my title, right? It's like this is what you do every day. You provide but the therapeutic approaches that I take are very different, but also very important to do. So just being brave, like having those courageous conversations with your entities and your employer, um, you know, I think is important. And Tyler will tell you in the fall of last year, we started to look at the code of ethics. Actually, it was a few years ago, but we really started to flesh it out a little bit more to make it more, I guess, culturally relevant and all of that. Um, those kinds of things. Be sitting at tables that you can provide, I guess, your whatever knowledge you may possess, and just continuing to try. And also, I'm just noticing here, Norma mentioned, how can we as workers stand up for ourselves when upper management doesn't get it? That's really hard. That is really hard. And I feel like, I've certainly dealt with that as well, where again, the understanding is that, okay, you're full-time CT, but I'm like, yeah, but is there a way that I can have, I guess, my role like embody other things because I recognize I'm in a reserve. I'm in a First Nations reserve. So yeah, um, I'm gonna just say it here, Norma. We wanted to come together as a table and to talk with those individuals and to talk about these difficult things, and I still welcome that as well. I've opened the evaluation, thanks Annette, okay. I would love to be there as well. Yes, Norma. No, just and then Nadia, I work for Nova Scotia Health. I would love to speak with you sometime. Of course, yeah. Just you, anybody that works with the government with Nova Scotia, like Mi'kmaq family, or with Nova Scotia Health, it's just Veronica.Bernard at nshealth.ca. So just send me an email and we can definitely do that. And even if like you're not very far at all, like if you even wanted to come together, I certainly have people that also do that too. And I welcome that anytime. And just let me know, Norma. I know you have my information. And we should do that soon.
You're in demand, Veronica.
Yeah. No, again, I could go back to those teachings of what Merdina and Albert say. It's like it's my job to share, and I want to. If I can be of help, certainly. And I expect nothing. I just want to help. Just want to help. So
And thank you for mentioning the consultation session we did last November around the Code of Ethics for the College of Social Workers. To speak more about that experience, I think it relates to the conversation we're having today and the content you shared. Um, with the College of Social Workers, we want to adapt the Canadian Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics, of course, for our regional context, for the work that we do here, the people that are doing the work here, the communities we serve. And when I first started working at the college, I'd heard a lot about how um, we've already done lots of consultation with Indigenous folks. We've done so much consultation with Indigenous folks. And then as we get to the November 26th section that we did with you, Veronica, and others, very clear that we hadn't, very clear that the folks who did it, I think with best intentions, did consult with Indigenous folks, but not Mi'kmaq folks. All the work that was done, it was only a couple. And so we had originally presented this as like this is the last step. We're going to do this and then we're going to be all done. And quickly learned that that was not the right choice. And it wasn't the right choice because it wasn't grounded in relationality, wasn't grounded in truth and reconciliation, and it wasn't ethical. So we ended up pivoting quite a bit and doing other sessions and changing the code of ethics in some ways pretty foundationally. And I think that's an example to speak to. Like one of the questions are like, how do you do this in practice? Is that you be open to change and willing to adjust timelines as needed, and centering on the relationship, especially for me as a settler Canadian, feels very important. So again, so much gratitude for you, Veronica, and the things that you shared at the sessions in the fall, but also today and your time here. I really enjoy it. Also, just see a question from Norma around the copy of the present or the PowerPoint. Veronica, if you're okay with this, I'll share it in the email that goes out to the attendees. Okay.
certainly. And I'm just reading another comment. Yeah, Norma, you guys will get a copy. And again, what do you think of doing social work and like covering your? I feel like, yeah, I see the importance of it too, like with documentation, but I feel like I'm just more about that present moment too. Like, when you're interacting with somebody, like, it's like, I remember before, like I'd be just there with a notepad and trying to, but that's gross. That's not, I feel like ideal, like not what I would want to see. So I'm very minimalistic with how I keep notes and just more about that moment. Also, other forms of interacting, like even with our trail. Now it's like, okay, so we have a trail that's like I had mentioned, like it's right behind the health center and it extends all the way to the high school. And there's different access points like the elementary school and the fitness center. And the idea this year, now that it's registered with Trans Canada Trails, is that it'll go around Indian Lake. And then for 2026, it's going to descend over to the beach. But even that, we have a healing garden too that we put down last fall, that has things like sweetgrass, blackberries, other different medicines, different types of trees, those kinds of things. Again, sometimes, I know when I started in this field, I didn't really have I guess, like a template to follow. I let it come from others. And I feel like that was the right thing to do, that they helped guide my practice and continue to. And that's what I go on every day, even though I know I'm bound to the college and I know, you know, certain limitations I have, but yeah, um, it can be difficult, and it can also be, I guess, not our way. I find, like, okay, let me doc. Yeah, like what Norma says, it's about being present, and I know Norma very well, and we two have a lot of good laughs, and it's like taking pictures. Like, say, yesterday, I didn't take any pictures of anything yesterday, and we did all kinds of great things. But that's how I try to live my life anyway. Um, but yeah, but no, welcome anything. Maybe too, like I'll put my email again in the chat. Like if people are like, oh my God, the night you go home and it's like, I should have asked her this or whatever, reach out to Tyler or me, and I'm happy to, like, if you want to pick my brain or you want to come together, I welcome all of that. Just reach out.
Well, thanks for putting your email in there. Folks, yeah, we'll end here then. And if anyone has any questions, you can reach out to me. I can forward them on to Veronica, or you can reach out to Veronica directly through the email that she put in the chat. I put the presentation from today in the chat as well, and also the code of ethics according to your father in the chat. And then it'll also go out in the follow-up email today around 4 p.m. Yeah, Veronica, great session. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights. And also want to really reinforce the opportunity to read Veronica's article that she wrote as well. And I'll put that in the chat. That's also in the Eventbrite if you haven't had a chance to read that.
Yeah, it's a really good summary. And it's a reflection piece I did through St. Thomas University, and I participate in this interfaith forum. So it just basically talks, like, in summary about what we mentioned, but in, I guess, greater depth. And it ties in very nicely with this PowerPoint. Like, I know I only had an hour, but I feel like it's almost like an opportunity to say, oh, okay, this is what she was talking about when she went to that pipe ceremony, or oh, that's what she was talking about with the sacred medicines and how she integrates that into practice and whatnot. So yeah, but definitely check it out. It's available. It's online on the Eventbrite link, and you can also search it under Reflections on Mi'kmaq Spirituality in My Clinical Social Work Practice.
Thank you. I was trying to find it online and I couldn't find it. And so you just named it. Now I can put it in the chat. There it is. Perfect. Appreciate that. I was like, she's reading my brain. Yeah, well, folks who are still on the call, I hope that you have a good rest of your day and that you have things to look forward to this week and this weekend. Veronica, you and I will catch up sometime soon, I'm sure. But otherwise, I hope you have a good day. And I know the students that are with you too, I hope they also have a good day. And yeah, take care, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll chat again sometime soon. Hopefully we'll do this again in the future as well. And thank you all for all your wonderful comments and all the love and being patient, and just, yeah, reach out anytime, any one of you.